Well, hello everyone. My name's Tom Neely. I'm on the board of directors of the Cornelius Corps. I'm super happy today to introduce Jeff and Karen Munson of Topsom, Maine. Jeff is a local physics teacher in the area, high school and college level, and Karen is a district superintendent in the United Methodist Church, um, the Mary Waters district, overseeing a number of churches. We're really pleased and welcome Jeff and Karen. It's good to see you. And the reason Jim had you recommended early on as representative of people that have known the Cornelius Corps since its inception. So if you guys could just start and say, how did you get introduced to the Cornelius Corps, and what's been your journey since?
I think that the introduction of the Cornelius Corps, my first introduction, as I'm trying to think about this vividly, driving with Jim in the mid 90s, and we would frequently go somewhere together, sometimes into the district, somewhere just to go out for lunch. And we'd known the Melsons since I'm guessing early 1990s, maybe 80, maybe as early as 89. We'd been in the church with him. And Jim at the time, and this is, I'm guessing, 95, 96 time frame, is starting to think about what life beyond being a pastor in a local church could look like for him. And he through some connections within the district, and particularly with work that he'd done with the Church of the Savior and Norman Crosby and other areas where he was looking into the district, and he was looking beyond what the church was doing, necessarily the United Methodist Church in Northern Virginia, and started to think about what would it be like if I were not going to be a local pastor.
Right.
And if I wanted to pursue some kind of an extension ministry that was related to this, and was fascinated by the idea of building this bridge between Northern Virginia and the district.
Yeah, and we specified Jeff's meaning the District of Columbia, not the
Got you.
Methodist.
Right. Yeah.
Got you.
And
For sure.
and we kind of left it. We got transferred. I was in the Navy. We were all in the Navy because that's how it works. Got transferred somewhat unexpectedly to Japan in 1998, and when we stayed in touch with the Melsons, managed to see them occasionally as if we had to come back to the United States for business or vacation. And by the time we got back in 2000, Jim was ready to launch the Cornelius Corps, and had kind of worked out a whole bunch of things while we were gone, but backfilled us in. And while we were never back in the Northern Virginia or the district, the DC area, we were able to talk with him and figure out what his plans were going to be. And we did go down for his final local pastor church service, and then several times went down and connected with things that he was doing with the Cornelius Corps, particularly in the Shaw district.
Okay. Great. Karen, you were a part of that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Jim and I were developing concurrent relationships with the Church of the Savior without them being connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I was becoming involved with one congregation at the same time that he was starting to learn from Gordon. Um,
I see.
and really having our own sense of missional engagement and neighborhood relationships shaped by those same ideas at the same time. So it was very organic for us. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this thing,
Right.
but it was an organic development that we would pass ideas back and forth um, as friends and co-workers. And
Yeah, I don't think there was a thing then.
no, no, it was
You guys were forming a thing,
planting
as it
seeds.
turns out.
Yeah.
How have you continued to engage then over the years?
So when we got back, we have all along made a financial commitment as part of our own spiritual journey in
Mm-hmm.
stewardship. It's really important for us to have part of our income that we give away and have absolutely no say in what happens with it. That
Right.
we're trusting God's work in other places. So that's been consistent. Um, but once I began the work of superintendency, I currently have 71 churches I'm working with, many of which are, most of which are small membership churches. And I was really interested in both how we brought some of the relational ideas of Church of the Savior as Jim was developing them in the Cornelius Corps, and how we could do that in connection with his strong racial social justice framework. Because Maine is still the whitest, oldest state
Mhm.
in the Union. And so there's a lot to us that can feel hypothetical or theoretical or important, but not have names and faces in our community.
Hmm. Interesting.
So Jim is able to speak of real life experiences and relationships and help us connect in ways that our communities may not have resources for.
I see.
And at the same time, when Jim has visited, so he's brought his ministry to us in Maine several times. Um, he's very interested in local history, and so he rekindles in us an interest in some of the events in Maine history and in our
Oh,
communities where Maine has struggled or where Maine has led in areas of racial justice. For example,
interesting.
her lawyer was educated here in Bowdoin, where Jeff and I live nearby.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, you don't hear too much about Maine on the forefront of that work, but it does have its own story, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in your involvement, as you reflect back on it, how has it changed you? Been a transformative, had a transformative effect, I guess, um, over the years.
Yeah, because it's the actual work at the Cornelius Corps we've lived through kind of vicariously with just
Hmm.
the newsletters and the occasional times that we've gone down to visit um, over the past years, and in some cases for me it was just a drive through while I was returning from travels in the South where we'd taken the school a school group to go do some mission work in Louisiana. And at the same time that I always had this dream, and Jim and I had kind of talked about this a few times of being able to take a school group down to Washington
Okay.
and work with some of the work that he was doing and look at some of the issues around poverty and racial inequality and gentrification and everything that goes into that whole big package, because that was clearly not something that most of our students would be involved in. And they happen to be things that I'm really interested in and really interested in having my students as we do their character development um, be aware of and be familiar with. So there's that aspect of that that's been really useful. And I think, and Karen had alluded to this earlier, is our financial support of that has, at least for me, been really a part of my growth in stewardship and
Mm.
the ability to let go of what I have and just send it off and hope that somebody's making good use of it, which, as near as I can tell, it has been made very good use of. But that was important to me at a time, 20
Hmm.
something years ago, when it wasn't important to me, and now it very much is.
Oh, very interesting.
That's kind of a collateral, I think, effect,
Yeah, there's no telling how the spirit works
right?
in things.
Thank goodness we can't predict it all.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And for me, it's I'm thinking of it in terms of corporate transformation
Hmm.
with the churches and communities I work with. So the workshops and teachings that Jim has brought to churches in our area has really been part of an ongoing transformation.
Mm.
Uh, Really, part of our effort to normalize conversations about race and relations and inequities and addressing and listening. Um, and I see the result of that in how many churches we've had over the past 18 months during COVID doing intensive book studies um, by African American authors, current authors, and doing it using some of the spiritual formation tools that
Okay.
Jim has offered. So, that's transformative in multiple intersecting ways.
Sure. Sure, that's really interesting. I mean, the name of Cornelius Cord, the vision's always been that it'd be more than just Jim.
Yeah,
Have this multiplying effect,
yeah,
and that's exactly that'll make his heart sing as he thinks
yeah.
about that.
And in
Does
fact, in
mine.
the last 6 months, Jim's been part of another transformation project that we have underway here, where we're combining, excuse me, the education of our certified lay ministers with the curriculum of neighborhood seminary, which is the brainchild of Elaine Heath. So Jim has come onto our
Right.
faculty and integrated that work. So much of it is building relational networks,
Mm-hmm.
right, that are transformational in organic, not programmatic ways.
Great. As you've been in United Methodist Church for some time, so you understand both the benefits of it and the challenges. How have you seen the work Jim's been doing manifest itself within the church leaders themselves?
Well, the form of the mission group,
Mm.
right? It's just we're at a time when Methodists are relearning how to be Methodists,
Okay.
and we're
Right.
taking back to the core vessel shape in which discipleship can be formed.
Right.
And so that, it's not something that everybody jumped on board with at the same time, but
Mm-hmm.
it's growing. It has
Mm-hmm.
good roots here now. And again, the spiritual formation exercises that he shares, we've kind of moved from it being mostly pastors he was interacting with to mostly laity he's interacting.
Wow.
And I've been talking with a number of them from the neighborhood seminary cohort this week and have heard many times how powerful the formation exercises he's sharing are. And they'll all take that back to their local
Sure.
churches.
That's super. I mean, that's very exciting to hear. 'Cause that's always been one of my things is, why am I involved in mission group type things? Why am I involved? And my answer is because it works.
Right, right.
It's real simple.
And when you don't have something like that, um, people burn out.
Yeah.
It doesn't last. It becomes mutually destructive instead of
Mm.
healing, constructive.
Wow. Right. Well, one final question before I let you go. Um, Based on what I heard, can you tell us something interesting about the history of Maine that all of us that don't live there want to know?
Oh, Jeff gave you the Kents Hill tidbit, which is pretty cool. Kents Hill is actually when it was Maine Wesleyan Society, was the oldest coeducational institution in the United States. It never admitted women; it always admitted women.
Oh my gosh.
We were pretty sure we're there. There might be a college that beat us to it, but we haven't been able to figure that out. Um, and if we take a look at racial equality, or we take a look at the issues that are hitting everywhere are certainly hitting in Maine with large populations of immigrants
Mm.
from um, from Africa and from Europe coming in right now, and as Karen said, um, we are age-wise the oldest state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's maybe a toss-up with Vermont, but we are considered to be the widest state, the least segregated state.
Right.
And so now building those issues and bringing those up, to the forefront are important. And people don't know that, Maine has had a history of segregation and racial injustice, but at the same time has been on the forefront of some of the movements to stop that. They're on leading edge of
You think of abolitionism?
yeah, and some of the work that was done there. It's interesting. We live north of Brunswick, Maine,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, and by north of it, I mean it's a 20-minute, or not 20-minute. It's about a 20-second drive across a bridge that we
Okay.
live next to get into Brunswick. But at the end of the main street that we can see is the Congregational Church there, where it's considered. Harriet Beecher Stowe and Joshua Chamberlain had adjacent pews back in the 1860s, and it's thought that we finally say that that's the place where the Civil War began and ended, with those two individuals being part of that. So Maine has this rich history. You just have to go diving into it, and it's great, and at the same time, it's very, very ugly.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, if folks are interested in reading one of our darker stories, the story of Malaga Island is something that the state is really coming to terms with.
Oh,
In this,
cool.
yeah.
Well, so much. Thank you so much for your time. It's really interesting. It's so nice to meet you. Certainly heard Jim, mention your names quite often. And thank you for carrying the DNA of the Cornelius Corps and all its tentacles, Church of the Savior and many others, to new geography and new people. I mean, I think that's just wonderful. So we appreciate it so much.